Book of Joshua, chapter 7. We've seen the beginning of the chapter. Starts out, doesn't sound too good, does it? Because Achan, a member of the Israelites, the nation of the Israelites, he saw something, took it, and hid it. Now, not only did he see something and take it, he stole it as well. Now, what we mean by stolen is, remember, God had told him not to touch the accursed stuff, leave all that alone. And he also said the silver and gold is mine. Goes into the temple treasury, right? Everybody remember that? They're going to use that gold to overlay the ark and the covenant there, the golden candlestick, the table of showbread. All those things were going to be layered with gold. Those cherubim, if you stop and look at these two cherubim right here, are they just layered gold or onto molds? No, they're solid gold. All right? These are solid gold. So that took a lot of gold, didn't it? All right? So that God had a reason for it, and that was explained to them plainly before they went into Jericho, before they marched on that seventh day. Hey, look, do not touch the accursed thing. Leave it alone. The gold, silver, and the iron vessels come to the house of God. All right? But Achan, he chose to take it, and he hid it, and he took it home to his tent and buried it under his tent. Okay? Israel, Joshua, nobody knew anything about it right then except for who? Exactly. And I want you to see that no matter how sneaky you are, guess who's watching? He is always there. God's watching. And that should be like a lightning bolt to us whenever we are tempted to sin. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't God watching me? Better not do that. And then that helps get rid of that old devil off your shoulder there whispering in your ear. Go ahead. He won't see. He sees, don't he? God sees. So Achan thought that he had got away with it, but no, he didn't. And now that starts the snowball for this incident in chapter 7. Because Achan sinned, the next thing is you see a slackness on several parts that result in sin as well. We see that Joshua sent 2 spies down to spy out this country of Ai. And I looked that up, by the way. That's how it's pronounced, Ai. Not I, like I always say, I. But it's Ai. And we see that he sent those 2 spies down, and they come back and say, hey, Joshua, they just a few folk. We got no problem whooping them. Let's just send 3,000 and let the rest stay at home. Give them a little vacation from all that heavy fighting they did in Jericho. They didn't do no heavy fighting. They just cleaned it up, didn't they? Because God wiped most of those soldiers out on the walls. That's where they'd be standing, wouldn't it? When those walls fell, what do you think they were going to fall on? Them soldiers. So all they had to do was run through and take care of the rest of the population, and boom, they're done. They didn't have no hard work at all. So these 2 spies have a sin, we call it a sin of presumption, or a presumptuous sin. And that means they took it upon themselves to give Joshua, the leader, advice. Now, it's okay to give your leaders advice, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with that. But look at their suggestion was say, hey, we don't need to go all out this time. Let's just do a little bit. So you see the pride there. Pride there. And then Joshua, look at what Joshua, verse 3, and they returned to Joshua and said unto him, let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor thither, for they are but few. See, there's his excuse. So there went up thither of the people about how many?
3,000.
So Joshua did what? He listened to their advice. Now, it said 3,000 men, and notice the punchline, and they fled before the men of Ai. Ooh, what's different with this picture?
I think we
God ain't with them. You see, Joshua and the leadership of Israel and the armies all should have been waiting in anticipation of what God told them to do next. If God didn't tell them what to do, they could seek him out, right? Hey, Lord, here we are. We're ready. Where do you want us to go next? And God would have told them, probably, i.e. But you got to do it this way, my way. I remember Jericho, he gave them specific instructions on what to do. 1 lap a day till the 7th day, and 7 laps on the 7th day, and then what to do on the 7th lap of the 7th day. And they were to shout, blow the trumpet, and the walls would fall. Specific instructions, right. And every man was supposed to go where he was and work his way through and destroy everything left. So now we have this lapse in judgment, this pride, and this arrogance in presuming they know better how to defeat this little bitty old town. What's the surprise here? God cut that short, didn't he? They ain't know where they was going to win. Think about it. So you think about this. Remember, the ark had been present during Jericho. God had been glorified. Every lap, they could see that ark. That was the presence, represented the presence of God. God was there in the crossing of Jericho, or not the crossing of Jericho, but the crossing of Jordan. And at Jericho, God was glorified in that. But where's the ark now in this procedure that just happened? Didn't go, did he? So what's that mean? They thought they left God behind. They exempted God from this service. Well, that's bad news if you stop and think about it. If you think you can do something without God, you best think again. Too often we try to solve things our own way. Too often we come up with our own solutions. Oh yeah, that looks the best way. Let's just do that. Instead of seeking out God, seeking out God's will, they said, well, let's just do it this way. And you can see that self-pride. Well, hey, we had such a major victory here. Surely we could have the same victory over here. And they could have, had they waited on God. So the idea here is that they needed to wait on God. Now I want you to see in verse 6 where Joshua's at. You can see this bothered Joshua because, number one, the results, 3,000 cowards occurred. All at once, 3,000 men were cowards. Now, that's a lot of cowards, isn't it? 3,000. Turned their backs and ran. While they were running, 36 of them got caught and slain. So here now we've got Achan involved, the 2 spies involved, Joshua involved. Now the 3,000 are involved, and now 36 men are dead, and they have to flee. So Joshua says, what's wrong with this picture? And Joshua recognizes the fact that they had slighted God. They slighted him. They offended him and his ark. Now remember, this is top lid on the ark is called what? That's the mercy seat. Not the box, that's the ark. This is the mercy seat. And God was said to dwell right there like his throne was right there. Okay? In the midst of those 2 cherubim. That was where his throne was. That's where he spake to them. That's where he issued his order. That's where his glory, his presence was on that ark. And to see that ark walking around, well, that showed those heathen armies, hey, here's God. Deal with that. And God was glorified and honored. His ark was glorified and honored. And his glory shone forth when it was going on. Crossing the Jordan, remember? The ark went first at crossing the Jordan, right? It went first. As soon as the feet of the priests stepped into the water, what happened to the water? Stood still. And what else? It dried out. And as soon as they stepped out, what happened? The water started flowing again. So the priests were first in and last out. And I wanted to remind you, remember this is made out of shittim wood, but remember it's covered, this is solid gold, and it's covered in gold. So how much you think that thing weighed? It was a lot of weight, so 6 men had to carry it. All right, now you think about those 6 men standing there holding that weight. Wouldn't be easy, would it?
Plus the tablets.
Right? Plus the tablets, the stones in there, the pots in there, the sticks in there. That's all in there. It's not a light load. And so it had to be 6 strong priests, Levi priests, clean priests, to be able to carry that. And there they had to stand until all of those, I'd say 1 million, just say 1 million people went across that river. And no doubt the people hurried up a little bit. It says that they hurried a little bit to get on so that they could get the priest to get off and get some relief. But you see, God was glorified in that. But now, Joshua failed to involve God. He followed the advice of those 2 proud spies. That pride got a little bit contagious. And you have to watch that. That's what happens. Pride gets a little bit contagious. So now, Joshua is laying on his face. Look at it says in verse 6. And Joshua rent his clothes. All right? Now remember, Joshua had been wearing them clothes how long? Over 40 years, right? And he tore them. Rent them. That's what it's a symbol of what? What's rending your clothes a symbol of? Mourning, being torn up, all torn up. And they've sprinkled dust on their heads. You'll see that down at the last part of the verse. And then what else did he do? He fell on his face, but where did he fall on his face at? Before the ark. All right, see that? Before the ark. So here's the leader, the anointed leader of God. He tears his clothes. He falls flat on his face in front of the ark. And he throws dust on his head. And he stays there till eventide, it says. So Joshua begins, you can see now, because Israel has suffered defeat, he's beginning to realize something. Wait a minute. Something's wrong. He's beginning to understand that he had sinned by neglecting to seek counsel of God, by following the advice of those 2 spies, and by only sending 2,000 men for 3,000. So God says, I'm not going this time. I guess I'll just stay here. And that's what he did. He stayed in the camp, remember? Only 3,000 men went, so the rest of them stayed home. So what happened? The men of Ai defeated them, chased them all the way back to camp. They turned around and left, but before they left, they caught 36 of them and slew them. So Joshua cries unto the Lord. But I want you to see the similarities between this defeat and another defeat related to the Promised Land. Go, if you will, to Numbers 14. Numbers 14. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Mosi Nagin. Numbers chapter 14. Go down to verse 40. Now this is the chapter where the spies have reported back, and the children of Israel said, we ain't going. Now this is Moses speaking here. What was going to happen He says that they were all going to die out in the wilderness. Verse 40, and they rose up early in the morning and gat them up into the top of the mountain, saying, Lo, we be here, and will go up into the place which the Lord hath promised, for we have sinned. He said, we've changed our minds. That's what they're saying. We've changed our minds and we're going to go on in. See that pride again? See that foolishness? See that arrogance? God told them they were going to go out in the wilderness and die. They can't go in there and win. They'll lose. They'll get whooped on. And guess what? They try it. Now look what it says. Moses warned them. Verse 41. And Moses said, Wherefore now do ye transgress the commandment of the Lord, but it shall not prosper. He's telling them right up front. It ain't going to work, fellas. Don't do it. Go not up, for the Lord is not among you, that ye be not smitten before your enemies. See what he's saying? God ain't going with you. Similar circumstances with Joshua, huh? God wasn't with him. Now look. It says, For the Amalekites and the Canaanites are there before you, and ye shall fall, look at that, shall fall by the sword, because ye are turned away from the Lord, therefore the Lord will not be with you. In other words, you turn your back on God, he ain't going to be with you. But they presumed to go up into the hilltop. Nevertheless, the ark of the covenant of the Lord and Moses departed not out of the camp. Does that sound familiar? It's almost a mirror image, isn't it? You would think they'd figure this out. But now remember, this is the other generation. Okay, not the new generation, the other generation. But Joshua is right there. Now look at verse 45. Look what happened. Then the Amalekites came down, and the Canaanites which dwelt in that hill, and did what? And discomfited them even unto Hormah. Even unto Hormah. Which means they whooped up on them and kept whooping on them until they finally retreated. So you see the similarities here between the two? Whenever you neglect to listen to God, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. They failed to give God the glory. They failed to heed God. They failed to listen to God. And God told them, hey, look, you're going to perish in the wilderness. You didn't want to cross. You didn't want to trust in me. You believed the spies of the 10 report. And you didn't believe Joshua and Caleb. They're the only two that's going to live, matter of fact. He told them that. Joshua and Caleb are the only two that's going to be surviving out of this whole generation. And they said, oh, we've changed our mind. We'll go. Oh, too late. Well, Moses basically tells them, oh, too late. Don't go. He said, it ain't going to work. Sure enough, it didn't work, did it? Why? They were disobeying God, and they chose to do it and said, oh, we're going to do it anyway now. God will have to be with us if we go. Moses said, he ain't going. Now, how did Moses know? God done told him. So you see, here now we see that Joshua, back in Joshua now, is laying on his face before the ark. Now why do you think he went to the ark? Right. He was seeking out God, and he knew that that mercy seat represented a place where he could get mercy and grace. Remember, through the sacrificial system, Joshua was aware of the system, how that blood had to be shed. Remember that? And that blood had to be shed. Remember, the priest would bring in a drop on each one of those horns, and then he would sprinkle it around this 7 times with a hyssop branch. Sprinkle the blood. And then God would roll back the sin of Israel for another year. Well, Joshua now is here, and look what time it is. I want you to see that. It says in verse number, let me find it. Verse 6, it says, And Joshua rent his clothes, fell to the earth upon his face before the ark of the Lord, until when? So these men got killed and all that first thing in the morning, and now Joshua said, we we got to do something different. I know he began to be convicted. You've sensed that because what did he do? He goes straight for the Ark of the Covenant and he falls on his face and realizes, hey, God, I've sinned. So you see this building up in his heart, this convicting of his heart. He has to go and get relief. And now you'll see at the eventide, remember, you can write this down, Exodus 29 verses 38 and 39 talk about the two offerings, one in the morning, and when was the other one? In the evening, okay? So Joshua stayed there until the evening sacrifice had been performed. And what was that sacrifice for? For the sins of the people, okay? So Joshua waited till that sacrifice was performed, and then he cried out to God, hoping to obtain mercy for Israel because of their sin. So we see the similarities here. We see the problem when self-will takes over and says, we're going to do it our way. And I say that now because we live in what's called the Laodicean church age. And the Laodicean church age is all about the right of the people. That's what Laodicea means, the rights of the people. Everybody does their own thing. Everybody gets to have it their way. Okay? The rights of the people. So, here now, God has said, Joshua, you do it my way. So Joshua is pouring out his heart, and he waits till the sacrifice, and he falls flat on his face. Now think about this. I want to show you here as Joshua represents a type of Christ here. Let's go over to Matthew 26. Matthew 26. Remember the night of the Last Supper? What happened after they finished the supper? Remember they sang a song and they went out where? Where'd they go? The Garden of Gethsemane. Go to chapter 26, Matthew. Go down to verse 39. And I'll start a little bit before that. I'll start about verse 37. They're in Gethsemane. It says, and he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, that's James and John, and began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then said he unto them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful. And look at this. Even unto what? He knew his time was upon him, didn't he? Tarry ye here and watch with me. And he went a little further and fell on his face, look at that, and prayed. What's Joshua doing?
Same thing.
The same thing. You see, here's our Lord foreshadowing, or Joshua foreshadowing our Lord and his ordeal he's to take on. Right there in the Garden of Gethsemane, he took on our sin debt. Remember it said, he became sin for us. He that knew no sin became sin for us. What does that mean? He took on our sin debt. The debt that would put us in hell and into the lake of fire. For every sin that we'd ever committed, our debt for that sin, our punishment, was placed upon him. And that's why he says, my soul doth exceedingly sorrow. He was feeling all that sin of all time, of all people that would trust in him and paying for their debt. That's why he prayed about that cup, verse 39. And he went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Couldn't. He had to drink every drop of the wrath of God for us. He had to experience every drop of wrath of God for us. Our sin debt is in that cup. Our penalty was in that cup. It's on him. Nevertheless, not as I will, but what? Said, even so, Lord, I know. Not my will, but your will. Now, Jesus would have said, hey, I really don't like doing this. He could have said, no, I ain't going. And what happened?
We got what we deserve.
Exactly. We'd still have that sin debt to deal with. But he was obedient even to the cross. This is the night of his arrest. Remember, they've had the Last Supper. They've gone out into the garden to pray. They've sung a few songs on the way. Now they're in the garden praying, and the other rascals are asleep. And Peter, James, and John, when he comes to them, they're asleep too. Everybody got sleepy. Had that big meal, huh? You got sleepy. Then Jesus goes apart to pray. And you see his heart here. Said, but not my will, your will be done. So, Jesus goes and he prays. He falls down before the Father and he prays to the Father. Here Joshua, what does he do? He falls down before God, the presence of God, and he calls upon the Father. And guess what happens?
God helped him.
He got an answer. Verse 7 on down, we'll start back at verse 7. And look, we're not going to do it tonight, but we'll look at that. Start at verse 7 and see what Joshua's conversation with the Lord is. And then, even more miraculous, miraculous, I get it. More miraculous than that, God spoke back to him. Now remember, Joshua had sinned, right? So Joshua had to have that sin debt taken care of before God would speak to him. He had to have that sin covered before the Lord would speak to him. So Joshua pours out his heart, and then God answers back in verse 10. So read those 3 verses there, and we'll cover those, Lord willing, next time. All right? Let's stop there. Let's all stand.